Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see you all tonight. Tonight's class is sponsored in memory of Ruth Bat Julie Zohar, Hamerachem al kol beriotav, hu yirachem v'yachmol v'yachmos על נפש, רוח ונשמה של האישה כבודה והצנועה, מעלת רות בת ג'ולי זוהר, רוח אדוני תניחנה בגן עדן, amen. Today we're studying Parashat Korach. Before we study the parasha and we connect with the following, I would like to share with you a story in Masechet Yoma. The Gemara in Masechet Yoma, Daf Lamed Tet, talks to us about one of the great characters, one of the early Tanaim. His name was Shimon HaTzadik. We will find his name in Pirkei Avot, in the first Mishnayot, Shimon HaTzadik. He was the last person from the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. He was the last one to be part of the Great Assembly. This Great Assembly was at the beginning of the Second Temple. The connection between the First Temple and the Second Temple. He was the last one of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. He happened to be a Kohen Gadol for 40 years. The Gemara tells us that he was the Kohen Gadol of a whole different caliber. While he was the Kohen Gadol, there were several miracles that are not mentioned in the Mishnayot that were happening while he was there. First of all, the altar, the Mizbeach, was never extinguished during the 40 years. This was a miracle. No rain, no wind would extinguish the fire that was on the Mizbeach. That was in his zechut. The candle of the menorah never extinguished. And many other miracles happened while he was the Kohen Gadol. And then the Gemara tells us a very interesting story. And I would like to discuss this story with you tonight. The Gemara says 1 year after Yom Kippur, Shimon HaTzadik said, he came out from the Kodesh HaKodashim, and as we say in the Tefillah of Musaf of Yom Kippur, Seder Avodah, afterwards, the Kohen Gadol would make a party in his house, and everybody says, that's it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave everything, Bezat Hashem, Kasher Galbinu, Bezat Hashem, everything is going to be white as the snow, and he gives berachot, and they made him a party because he came out intact from the Kodesh HaKodashim. Rabotai, that year, he gave a speech, and he said, my dear brothers and sisters, my dear constituents, my dear Klal Yisrael, I have an announcement to make. My death is coming, and very soon. This was my last time as a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. I said, what are you talking about? How would you know that? Why are you saying this? He was his 40th year serving as the Kohen Gadol, and he said, that's it. That was the last time I served as Kohen Gadol. Now I'm about to die. And I asked him, how do you know? And he said to his students and to the people who were there, the following, I quote, every year I went into the Kodesh HaKodashim with a man. He was always dressed in white. But this year, that man came, but he was dressed in black. And that was the end of his proof. The Gemara tells us, indeed, at the conclusion of Sukkot, he took ill, and 7 days later, he died. And that's the end of the story. Quite an interesting story, but weird. The first problem with this story is, who was that man who was coming with him in the Kodesh HaKodashim? We know that there's no such a thing. Nobody goes in the Kodesh HaKodashim, only the Kohen Gadol. Who was that man who came with him in the Kodesh HaKodashim? Number two, how would he know that he would die? Why is that the siman that he's going to die? Just because whoever that person was dressed in black? Number three, what is that getting dressed in white or being dressed in black have to do with him dying? This is a lot of weird things that happen in the narrative of this Gemara. Are we going to try to understand this story and the depth of the message of the Chachamim and the Rabbi Shimon HaSadik in this case? In order to do that, we're going to explore a little bit this week's Parashat Korach. In Parashat Korach, you all know the story. I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm going to pick up from the reaction of Moshe Rabbeinu. Just a key element of the story is that Korach, although a person of machloket, how the Chachamim say, a person who is challenging authority, but he's saying something that bothers him. And he's saying something that is a strong statement. Ki kol ha'edah kulam kedoshim uvtocham Hashem. The whole Edah is fine. We are all equal. All men were created equal. We are all kedoshim. We're all chosen people. Why is it that the Kohanim are always taking, and specifically Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen are getting the most important jobs? And we would like to serve God in a higher level also. Why is it that Aaron HaKohen is always doing the avodah in the Kodesh HaKodashim and in all the places of the Beit HaMikdash, and we're like second-class citizens? What are we, chopped liver? We don't do anything. We just come to bring the rings and the gold and the for the Beit HaMikdash, and you guys are there, but we're all outside. Maybe we get a text message from inside, a picture from inside. But why are we less than the others? So this is the main ta'ana of Korach. We know that he makes a mistake in the way he addresses it, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets very upset. And come 4 reactions from the Torah, from Moshe Rabbeinu, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The first one is that immediately Moshe Rabbeinu says, you know what? You bring a ketoret, I bring a ketoret, and let's see whose ketoret is accepted. This is the first one. Immediately after his ketoret is accepted and Korach's ketoret is not, the earth swallows Korach and Datan and Aviram. Third demonstration is a heavenly fire that burns the soul of the 250 followers of Korach, and they die on the spot. And then the fourth is an epitome that comes in the camp. The Jews accuse Moshe and Aaron of being responsible for the Magefa. And now they have to stop this Magefa. And how do they do to stop the Magefa? Moshe says to Aaron and to the 12 tribes, bring each one a mateh, bring each one a stick, a lifeless wooden stick, and bring it into the Ohel Moed, and let's leave it there overnight. And Aaron also shall bring a stick and leave it there overnight. And we know the story that in the morning they go and they see the 12 sticks are still lifeless. They probably tried to put them in water, and they put vitamins, and they put minerals, and they did tehillim on the sticks, and nothing worked. And Aaron, his stick became, of course, Vayifrach Mateh Aaron. The Mateh of Aaron sprouted. And what came out of that? Flowers and young leaves of the tree of almond. And this is the end of the story. I ask you, Rabotai, think about the following. Don't we have an excess of proofs here? How many proofs do we need that Aaron and Moshe were the right ones and Korach and his followers were wrong? We got the first one was the Ketoret. The second one is the death of Korach being swallowed. The third one is the 250 who get burnt. Then there is the Magifa, and then you bring the stick. How many times? How many things do you need to prove that Moshe and Aaron were right? Where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? And besides, there's another question. Why such a miracle? There could have been a flying camel with a banner in the back, like we have on the beach in Florida. You know, they tell you tonight special 2 for 1 in this location. Okay, it could have been one of those miracles that said Aharon and Moshe emet. That's it. We're in the world of miracles, already taking a lifeless piece of wood and making it sprout almonds. Why dafka that miracle? You know, miracles don't just happen. They have a strong significance. There's a deep significance in a miracle. So what is it that this miracle is telling us? It's not just a lifeless piece of wood that becomes almond. Rabotai, we're going to start with answering that last question. Using force, physical force, could sometimes bring a solution to a problem. But it's a very small piece of the puzzle. It brings a quick solution to a problem, to an issue, usually to something physical. And sometimes it is necessary. But the ikar of the problem is not being answered. The question that Korach had is not answered by killing Korach and by killing the 250 people. His question remains, why is Aharon the one who is the Kohen Gadol and I cannot serve Hashem? I want to serve God. Doesn't it sound good? He wants to serve God also in a higher level. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What is the answer to this? Can you answer something like this with a fire? Can you answer something like this with violence? Never. You're not going to get anything with that. You need to answer this with depth, with education, trying to teach them something. And that's why it seems that there's an excess of proofs that Moshe and Aaron are the ones chosen by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but there isn't. Because as long as it was necessary to use the physical force, that's for a local technical problem. And sometimes it is needed. But are you healing the problem? Are you explaining the problem? You take, for example, all the looting and all the violence that happened. It's an expression of a deep problem in a society. Maybe a division in a society. And so many things. I don't want to get into this conversation. It has nothing to do with our subject. But just as a mere example, you don't treat the problem with violence. You may need violence to stop an issue, a technical issue, a local issue. If they're going to destroy the whole city, you need to bring a police force. That's just the fact. But bringing police force and shooting on looters is not going to bring a solution to a problem. It's going to bring a technical solution, not a solution, technical halt of a problem. But the divisiveness in the society, the racism, and all the problems that come with it is not going to be a solution through a bullet. That's not going to happen. Coming back to our subject, Korach is expressing a problem. And that problem is not being treated by opening the floor or by killing the adherents to his rebellion. It may have been necessary. It must have been necessary if God did it. And obviously it was a miracle, so it must have been directly from the hand of God. But we're still missing the most important. How do you answer the doubt of Korach? How do you convince the Jewish people that Moshe and Aaron are the ones who are supposed to be serving, and especially Aaron is supposed to be serving inside the Beit HaMikdash and not just anyone? How do you answer that? And this is what the last point is coming to teach us. The stick is coming to teach us this message, and I would like to share it with you. In Hebrew, there are there are two names for a stick. And by the way, it's the same two names that we have for the tribes, because the tribes are considered branches from Yaakov, as if Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov is the trunk, and from them come the Shevatim. What's a Shevet? Shevet is a branch. So they come from, it's like a tree, and you have branches that come from Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So it's a Shevet. It's also called the Mateh. Rashi HaMatot, we're going to see in Parashat Matot. The heads of tribes. The tribe is either a Shevet or a Mateh. And they're both the same word for a piece of wood. Rabotai, in Hebrew, there aren't two words to say the same thing. Whenever you have two words that are synonyms, you ask yourself a question: what is each one's nuance? Why is Shevet and Mateh the same thing? The quick answer is that it's not the same thing. If the Torah calls the same thing two words, it means it's not the same thing. What is the difference between Shevet and Mateh? A Shevet is a branch while it's still attached to the tree. So I will call that a living branch. A Mateh is after it is detached from the tree, it is called a Mateh, which I will call a lifeless stick. So a Shevet is alive. A Mateh is dead. That's the first information we need to know. So in the context here, Moshe Rabbeinu is coming to the 12 tribes and to Aaron, and he's saying, bring a Mateh, bring a lifeless stick, bring a detached piece of wood, dry, that has no life to it. And let's see who could take that and turn it into a living tree. The symbolism behind this is the following. A person who in the presence of the Kohen Gadol, in the presence of the Kohen Gadol, a person who was lifeless could transform into an orchard. When dead staffs, when Shevatim, Shevet, become, not Shevet, sorry, when Mateh, when Matot, dead staff, become living gardens and vitality. When you create life, death disappears. That is the man chosen by Hashem to be the Kohen Gadol. A person who can see an inextinguishable, moist and spark that remains forever in their soul, although they look like dry sticks. This could be a leader of the Klal Yisrael. The symbolism here was Aharon is not inside the Kodesh HaKodashim because he comes from Shevet Levi and because he's the Kohen Gadol, and that's it, and it's a privilege that comes like this. Then Korach says, we all have that privilege. We should all be blessed with that special thing. We could serve also HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a bigger way. That's 100% true. But that's not why Aharon was chosen. The reason Aharon is the Kohen Gadol is because in Aharon's presence, someone who is lifeless could become with life. Parach Mateh Aharon. The Mateh in the presence of Aharon becomes full of life. A Mateh that could become life is only because Aharon sees someone and he doesn't see death, spiritual or emotional or psychological death. But he sees somebody who has a chance to shine, somebody who has a chance to become from a Mateh to become a Shevet. And that explains to Korach. His ta'ana was everybody else could also serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Of course everybody else could serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's 100% true. But in the Kohen Gadol, what is he busy doing inside the Kodesh HaKodashim? He's busy believing in others. He's been praying for others. When you see someone and you don't believe that person could become something, then all your prayers and all your wishes, they don't work. They could only work if you believe that the other person could become something. If you could take a mate and you could change it into a shevet, then you're worthy of representing the Jewish people. Because you need to have hope in them so that when they see you, they see life in themselves. The person in whose presence the stick can become an orchard is the Kohen Gadol. And that's not only the job of the Kohen Gadol. This is the job of any leader. Aaron HaKohen is just representing leadership. Leadership is not a privilege. Leadership is the way you look at others. If you could take a mate and you could change it into a shevet, so then this is somebody who is worthy of becoming a Kohen Gadol. And I'll give you an example of this philosophy in a totally mundane context. In the early 1900s, there was a shoe company in the United States. This shoe company was exploring, trying to do business with other countries. So they sent 2 salespeople to Africa. And they said, explore Africa. It's a big continent, and we have no idea what's going on there. The early 1900s, they didn't have, much pictures or any possibility of remotely have information about Africa. I'm sure they did their research a little bit, but the best thing was to send 2 salespeople there. And they got 2 messages back from the 2 salespeople. One went to one area, one went to a different area. This is a true story. And they get a telegram from the 2 people. The first one says, bad news. People do not wear shoes in Africa. They go bare feet. No business down here. I'm coming back. They get a few days later another telegram from the other guy. He says, good news. People do not wear shoes in Africa. It's time to introduce the shoe concept to Africa. Crazy opportunity. There's no competitor in Africa because nobody sells shoes. And you got 2. One who is looking at a grim picture and one who's looking at a positive picture. Aaron goes into Kodesh HaKodashim and he could only represent the Jewish people if he sees in a dead stick a possibility or an opportunity for life. This is the only way that Aaron HaKohen is the Kohen Gadol, not a privilege. Because when he's going to the holiest place, he's going to pray for the people. And he needs to have hope for them for this to work. That is the educational purpose of having this exercise of bringing each one a stick. Let's see what happens with that stick. Aaron could make a person who is not living, could make him a living creature. That's what Aaron, that's a Kohen Gadol, not just somebody who feels he has a privilege. I was lucky enough to grow up in a yeshiva where my derasha yeshiva was like this. I don't know why I said was, he's alive, Baruch Hashem, Ad Me'ah Ve'esim. He is like this. While everyone learns that our generation is called in the language of the Hachamim, Nanas al Gabe Anak. Let me explain that. In the way the Torah is made, is that when you had Torah shebe'al peh to explain the Torah shebichtav, the oral Torah to explain the written Torah. Without it, we wouldn't understand the written Torah. It's a very difficult text, very obscure, and therefore we need to have explanation for that. The Chachamim's job is that. And here comes the Mishnah, or the Tanaim. The Tanaim, they start explaining the Mishnah, the Beraitot, and then come the Emoraim, who explain the Gemara. When you see the Amora, there are 2 ways of looking at it. Either because there's a machloket in the Mishnah and they don't understand and they don't know what the halacha is, therefore you say there's confusion, so therefore the Amoraim are discussing in the Gemara back and forth based on an insecurity of what happened, of a loss of information from the tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu? Or do you say no, there's a way to understand things in a different way? And maybe there's some information or some authenticity that has been lost somewhere. And therefore, but he gave rise to an ability to thinking in different ways. When you have only one way, it's very boring. When you have two ways, start thinking and start discussing, which is the whole purpose of Torah, to discuss something, a subject, to listen to other perspectives. And here you start discussions in the Gemara. And after the Gemara, there are discussions in the Geonim. And after the Geonim, there are discussions in the Rishonim. And after the Rishonim, there are discussions in the Acharonim and in the Poskim. And until today, there are discussions of Halacha. Where are we in all that? If you take the last generation or the generation before, many call us, we are nanas al gabe anak. We are midgets on the shoulders of giants. It's true. We can't compare ourselves to a Rambam. We can't compare ourselves to the generation of Rashi, of the Tosafot. This is the word of the Rishonim with a lot of care and very, with a lot of respect to their work. They hold the world. The world of the Torah is held on the hands of the Rishonim. And based on that, the Shulchan Aruch made the halacha, and all the poskim respect that. So are we smaller than them? Well, probably. But my rabbi used to say, we are anak al gabe anak. Anak al gabe anak. Anak al gabe anak means a giant on top of a giant. Why? Because we have taken the words of a Rambam. If you study a Rambam, for example, you're studying the Rambam, and it's a whole different world because you have one perspective and another perspective and another perspective. It may be coming and emanating from doubt, but at the end, it gave such beautiful jewels in halacha. A perspective from the Avia Ezri, a perspective from the Rav Chaim Mibrisk, the perspective of Even HaEzer, Dor Sameach, so many books that wrote about the Rishonim. You call that a midget on top of a giant? You could if you want. But he said, I don't see that as a midget. I see us as giants on top of giants. Because we have the same responsibility of being a link of this chain of Torah, of tradition, from the days of Moshe Rabbeinu until today. That makes you a midget? Fine. To me, it's a giant on top of a giant. That's who we are. I grew up with such an environment, and I could tell you, it feels good. It feels good when you see a rabbi of such a caliber who thinks of you like a giant. It makes people feel good. That's a Harun. That's a Harun HaKohen. When we see opportunity, when we see light, that's a Harun HaKohen. The job of the Kohen is not just to pray and to bring korbanot. It's a much bigger world. It's a much bigger job. It's a job of an architect from inside. From inside, he's seeing the world and he's seeing something positive. He's seeing a mate and he sees a shevet. He doesn't see a mate. We keep on doing a big mistake, Rabotai, is something I would like us to think about. We live in a world that things have changed. We live in a world that sometimes we see youngsters, on their screens, and what comes to mind many, many times is, and I say it, and I'm sometimes guilty of saying too much of it, but when we're younger, we used to take a ball and bounce the ball and play. That's it. Much healthier than being exposed to the whole entire world and then being on screens and antisocial and each one in their, in their worlds. And when you go to restaurants, see the whole family, each one on their screens, you're like, come on, guys. You came out to share some time together, put them down and talk. Now, this is all true, and I'm not trying to say it's not. But sometimes we are worried for them and we see something negative. And we may use expressions that are irritating, like, what a young man used to look like when we were younger. I think that's a bad phrase. I think it's an expression of a mate, it's not an expression of a shevet. We may be concerned and worried, and rightfully so, but not because they are less capable, but because there are major adjustments that need to be made. This has nothing to do with the shining brightness that emanates from the young generation, who I guarantee you will absolutely be successful. Sometimes we could see a generation and say, I am worried. To be worried is fine. But to say I'm desperate, and I don't think that something positive will come out of this, then that means we cannot be Kohen Gadol. And with that, I'll explain the first Gemara that we saw. Shimon HaTzadik was that Kohen Gadol. And that tradition that came from Kohen Gadol of Aaron HaKohen continued going down from Kohen Gadol to Kohen Gadol, teaching them as much as you would have worries and concerns. If you see light, and I don't like the title that I put in the shiur, the light on the other side of the tunnel. Rabotai, this is not a good title. The real title is if you don't see the light inside the tunnel, not on the other side of the tunnel, but the light inside the tunnel, then you cannot be the Kohen Gadol. Because the Kohen Gadol was able to take a mateh and to make it into an almond tree. That's what he could do. As an educational answer to Korach. When Shimon HaTzadik is saying, every year I go into the Kodesh HaKodesh in Yom Kippur, and there's a man coming with me. You know who that man is? It's the Klal Israel, that man. Because he's not going alone. He's going with all of us. He's not going for himself. He's going for all of us. It's not an individual adventure. It's an adventure, collective adventure. So obviously he's not going to be alone there. I mean, there was no one physical with him because he was alone as a person. But he was coming accompanied by the Klal Israel. And there, Klal Israel, imagine this Klal Israel, one person. And he says, every year I saw that person with a white beged. He was dressed in white, which means I had a positive perspective on them. As long as I saw him white, I knew that my mission was not over because I could lead them. When I got into the Yom Kippur, on Yom Kippur, and I saw my Klal Israel, I saw them in black. When I did not see anymore the Shevet, but I just saw a bateh, I saw a dry, lifeless piece of wood, then I knew that my mission was over. Because a Kohen Gadol who sees black is not a Kohen Gadol. Because a Kohen Gadol who sees his constituents as negative, he cannot lead. Because a person who sees a situation grim and doesn't see the light, not on the other side of the tunnel, but the light where he is right now, then he cannot be the Kohen Gadol. And that's the meaning of that Gemara. When he saw that, he said, I'm done. I have no more mission here. And I was born to be a Kohen Gadol. If I cannot be a Kohen Gadol, I'm out of here. And 7 days after Sukkot, he passed away. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all leaders in our own worlds. And I'm going to say something shocking to you. But if we're not capable of saying year 2020 was one of the greatest years ever, and it's not an easy one to say, that means we're not leaders. If somebody sees year 2020 and says, what a disaster, it was bad from A to Z, nothing worked, then that cannot be a leader. Because people who are under a leader like this can never be successful. But I would like to see year 2020 as one of the most opportunistic years. When was the last time we had an opportunity to meet ourselves so deeply and so personally like now? We were so busy in the spirals of money making that we forgot about ourselves. And thank God, we were waking up. Because whoever did not wake up is a big problem. This was an opportunity. I see light, Rabotai. The opportunity to meet our families from closer. To discover who they are, be it children or spouses. To revisit our principles. To readjust our values. To rethink our prayers. That is either the year of the Mateh or it's the year of the Shevet. Shimon HaTzadik saw it all. He lived at the end of prophecy, when prophecy was starting to extinguish. He saw Hellenism be born. He witnessed the downfall of Israel. But every year inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, he saw a white man. He did not see a dark person. He didn't see a person dressed in black. He saw a person dressed in white. He saw white, he saw life, he saw vigor. He saw the perach in the mate. But when the last year he couldn't see the white, he understood that that was it. You know, in Chinese, I don't know if Chinese is the right language we should be discussing this year, but in Chinese, there's no alphabet. It's not like our way of writing, both in Hebrew and English. There's no alphabet. It's all symbols. So every word or every I don't even know how to say it. Every word or every symbol that you see means something. It's a much more complex way of learning a language. By us, you have vowels and you have regular letters, and then you form words. So you learn how to read. In Chinese, it doesn't exist. It's symbols. And in Chinese, the same symbol that is crisis is exactly the same word, the same symbol that says opportunity. If you don't see opportunity in a crisis, you can't survive very long. Chinese people have been around for a couple thousands of years, because if every crisis is an opportunity, then that makes us winners. If when you see a mate, you see a mate, you can't lead. When you see a mate, you see a shevet, then you're a good leader. And that's what Korach did not understand. To be inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, it's not only about serving God, it's about seeing others with a different light. When you could do that, then you could be the Kohen Gadol. I was thinking if in Hebrew we have the same thing. How do you say a crisis in Hebrew? A crisis in Hebrew comes from a word that you all know, which is to break, lishbor. Lishbor means to break something. When somebody is shavur, when somebody is broken, karov Hashem lenishbere lev. Hashem is close to those who have a broken heart. In Hebrew, a crisis is mashber. A mashber is a depression, is a crisis, a moment of difficulty. It's called mashber in Hebrew. And mashber is the same word of shover, lishbor, shever. But the word mashber, incredibly so, means something else altogether too. And you know what that is? In Hebrew, mashber is also a birthing stool. They don't use those anymore. But when a woman used to give birth, she would be sitting on a chair, or something like a chair that was like half a toilet. So it would be open on the other end. That's a mashber, a birthing stool. Isn't it interesting? It's exactly like giving birth. When a woman gives birth, it hurts tremendously. Physical pain is unbearable. But the most beautiful moment of life is when life gives another life. When there is a mashber, there is mashber. When there is a crisis, there's a birthing stool. Something new is being born with that. It's called opportunity and crisis, being the same word. If we see that, if we see the white man, or the better said, the man dressed in white, if we see a shevet but not a mate, if we're able to sprout from a lifeless piece of wood almonds, so then we're capable of being a leader. This is what Korach did not understand. And this is what we have to see. And Baruch Hashem, Bnei Israel have always succeeded with that. And that's how we succeeded always in our long galut. Take, for example, the Holocaust. The Holocaust was the biggest makkah that Bnei Israel ever got. After the Holocaust, many people gave up. And no one could judge them. But what happened after the Holocaust? The Torah in America started booming like never before. Look at the results. Look at America today. There was never so much Torah like today. Incredible. After the Holocaust, Medinat Israel was born. How did you do that? After 2,000 long years of not being on the land of Israel, all of a sudden, 3 years after the Holocaust is over, the Jews go back to Israel in a state. How do you do that if it's not because you see the light inside the tunnel? Inside the dark, dark, dark tunnel, they're able to see light, because that's what life is about. When you could see the light in any situation. If you see our days today and you say, this is the most horrible times ever, then I understand that pain is not beautiful. Pain sometimes always is uncomfortable. But don't confuse pain and difficulty with light. It's two different things. When the lady gives birth, it hurts a lot. But it's yet birth. There's a reason why it goes through difficulty, maybe to appreciate it better. But sometimes it is necessary to have pain. Pain is not negative. Pain sometimes is necessary. But it doesn't mean it's not good. It means it hurts. It's like when you do a workout. You're working out. After you did 20 push-ups, 30 push-ups, it hurts. It hurts a lot. And what do you say? Oh, it hurts, it must be bad. Hacham balayla. If it hurts, it means it's good. It doesn't mean it's bad. When you go up the Mount Blanc, it hurts. You know, there's no chairlift to go up the Mont Blanc. You have to use your legs. But you're doing it for a purpose. That's good. Sometimes we need the difficulty to wake up. Sometimes we take things for granted. We're going through difficult times. I'm not saying it's not difficult. I'm not blind. I understand that. It doesn't mean that there's no benefit for the ones who, Baruch Hashem, are alive. Of course, we mourn the tragic loss of lives, and of course, no question about this. For the ones who are able to learn from that, look at the light. It's going to be great light coming to us. And it's not at the end of the tunnel. It's happening right here. You know, there's always a question. Why did Yaakov ask a beracha when he fought with the angel? He should have called 911. He shouldn't have asked him for a beracha. I'm not going to let you go until you give me a beracha. What is that supposed to mean? Call the cops. You've been robbed by a guy in the middle of the night. He's attacking you and you're asking him for a beracha. Can you imagine? Lo aleinu, someone is being kidnapped, in those countries. And on the way out, said, okay, well, we'll pay the ransom. Would you please give me a beracha? We're like, the guy's nuts. He became crazy inside. Yaakov is asking beracha from the attacker. Why is that? I think Yaakov understood something very different. Be thanking the enemy. He got a blessing through that. He was blessed by what happened. I will not let you go. He says, I will not let you go until you give me a beracha. What does that mean? I will not let you go until I feel the blessing in this encounter. That's what it means. Not until you give me a beracha. I will not let you go until I feel the beracha of what happened here. When I could feel the beracha of what happened here, then go. Maybe that's a segula. When we get the beracha of what happened here, then the problem goes away. There's no need for the problem anymore. Because there's beracha in every situation. You could look at mashber one way or the other. You could look at any situation one way or the other. When I could see the beracha, you're free to go, angel, or whoever that was. If I don't see the beracha, then it was beracha levatala. I need to see the derasha. That's Aharon. That's Shimon HaTzadik. If I could see white, I could lead. If I could see only dark, then I'm not doing the job. I can't do it. Because if I see white in you, that means that you could see white in yourself through me. That's a real leader. And here's our job. As long as we could see light in our kids, or in the people who rely on us, or the people that we lead, then there's a chance to lead. I want to end with a quote. And that quote, I don't know who said it, but it's so beautiful. More than what we believe in God, God believes in us. More than what we believe in God, God believes in us. And that's why God is God. When I know that, I have a mission, I have a meaning in life. I have a raison d'être. If I do that, then I could survive anything. That's a real leader. Korach didn't understand that. Korach thought, you serve, it's a privilege. No. Let me explain to you. That's why he was needed at the end. After all these things of force, now is the education. You know what the Kohen Gadol does inside? He takes a mate and he makes it into life. When you're able to take something that apparently is lifeless, you make it into life just by being, by trusting, by believing in another, and the other person is going to feel that. That's called mission accomplished. And that is what Korach did not understand. If we understand this, trying to always find the positive, something to learn. I will not let you go until I get the beracha, not from you, until I find the beracha from the situation. When I find the beracha from the situation, so then this was a blessing. You cannot say there was beracha levatala. And that's what we're living. We all have to find a beracha in that. Sometimes it's just our families, ourselves, our concepts, everything that we're living. So just thinking a little bit about things. Sometimes you have to get a little slap in order to wake up and say, oh my God, I didn't know I had so many blessings, Baruch Hashem. Look, I'm alive, I'm healthy, Baruch Hashem. I have parnasa, I have my family, I have this, I have that. And each one with their life, of course, and their difficulties. Be'ezat Hashem, we should be able to see the beracha. As long as we see the beracha, as we see the light, not at the end of the tunnel, as long as we see the light inside the tunnel, then we are big winners. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat